Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with allthingsbbq.com, and this is Birria on the Grill. First and foremost, let's not make fun of how I say birria. I can't do it. It's just not gonna happen right. I'm sorry. Now, if you haven't heard about birria, maybe you haven't been watching cooking videos on the internet in the past year or two because it has taken off like wildfire. It's spreading everywhere, which is probably funny to our friends down in Mexico who have been eating it for centuries. This is a dish from Jalisco, Mexico. It contains goat meat, typically, that's been stewed in some liquid with lots of spices and chilies. See, they put all these flavors in there to cover up the funky taste and smell of the goat meat. Way back in the day, well, it's just kind of stuck. It created this incredible flavor that's become such a sensation in that region and now around the world. Now, for us here in Kansas, in the middle of America, cow is our meat. This is what we have access to. So today, that's what we're gonna be cooking. So technically, this is a Birria de Res of the cow. So we've got a selection of cuts here. These are beef short ribs, great fat content. We've got some beef shin right here, which has got that bone and the marrow in it, and then some extra marrow bones, just because this marrow and this bone is what's really gonna make the broth or the consomme have great mouthfeel. But before we get into all that, let's go fire up the grill. Today we'll be cooking over lump charcoal in the Kamado Joe Classic 3. So let's go ahead and get that charcoal lit. Okay, we wanna get a pretty good base going here. We're gonna need this to be pretty hot to get a good sear to start off, and then we'll close it down for the braising process a little bit. All right, we're gonna start by just getting our beef seasoned up here. We hit this with just a little bit of oil for binder. And we're gonna keep this really simple here. There's so much seasoning in the broth that we're gonna use that for now, all we're gonna do on the surface is a little bit of salt and pepper. And we're gonna hit it with some of that Telecherry fresh cracked black pepper. So that's it for the beef now. Just slide it off to the side. We're gonna prep up the ingredients for the rest of the stew. Now we're using a variety of chilies today. We've got some guajillo, pasilla, ancho, and even a couple of chipotle. This is just a combination that I like, but before we can get these kind of soaking and softening up, I wanna get rid of the stems and some of these seeds. Now, the process is pretty much the same for each of these chilies. Gonna take just a little bit of time, so we'll just go ahead and work through the rest of them. All right, we got all those stem seeds, some of the pith out of there. We're gonna move on to the rest of the ingredients. So this is sort of our fresh aromatic base for the stew or the braise that we're building today. We've got white onion, some garlic and ginger. I'm gonna do the knife work on all of these real quick. So now that we've kind of got that fresh flavor base knocked out, we're going to put together a little sachet of our heartier dried herbs and spices that we want to include. So that's gonna start here with some bay leaves. Got some juniper berries. This is stuff I don't want to fish out of the stew later. So this, we're gonna put it in a sachet, some cloves there, and just a little bit of cinnamon. We're just gonna fold all that up. Make sure it can't escape. We'll tie it up with some twine. That's it. Well, we're back at the grill and we're ready to get started. I've got this set up so that we can first toast off some chilies. So we're set up with the cast iron griddle here. We're gonna get our dried chilies right here on the griddle. We just wanna start to kind of toast these and soften them up. This isn't gonna take long. We're only going to do this until they kind of get a little bit aromatic. We may see some of them puffing up as well. Yeah, when you start to see them curl like this one is doing right here, that means it's got enough toast on it. We're gonna flip it over and hit the other side. Those guajillos have pretty thin skins. Pasillas as well. The anchos are a little bit thicker. But you can see that these are already starting to become a little bit more pliable, and that's what we're going for. We're gonna wake up all that chili aroma and then rehydrate it in our broth. Let's take these off and make room for another round. So now that those chilies are toasted, we're gonna slide our Dutch oven in. We're gonna make sure it's nice and hot before we start searing off the beef. So we've been running the grill just wide open. It's like 500, 550 degrees in here. We're gonna get just a little bit of oil in our hot Dutch oven. And then we're gonna start searing off the beef. And this isn't to cook the beef. This is just to get a nice sear on the surface because that adds a ton of flavor. Adds some texture. And it starts to flavor our broth or consommé that we're gonna be making in the bottom by adding a fond to the pan that we can scrape off and include here in a little bit. Make sure you're not overcrowding your Dutch oven for this portion or you won't be able to get a good sear. All right, so we're getting a great sear on this, so I'm gonna turn this around and we wanna get that sear on all sides of the beef. All right, so we've got great color now on our beef short ribs. We're gonna take those off. We're gonna get our shin on here. Again, we're not cooking these right now. They're gonna be cooked later. We're just getting a sear so you can throw them right back on that pan where they were. And we're just working in rounds here to make sure we get some good browning on these. Nice browning there. One last flip and we'll be done with the searing. All right, well, we're all done with the sear now. And before we get to this next step, I want to get a little bit more charcoal down here in the Kamado. So we're just going to take this grate out and pour some in. Slide our Dutch oven back on here, and we can get started with building the stew. So first thing we're gonna put down is our white onion, and we're just gonna cook this down in this rendered fat until it's softened up a bit. So now the onions are looking translucent, getting a little bit of color. We're gonna throw in our garlic, which has just been crushed, and that'll break down during the braise. And we'll also add some minced ginger. Give that just a minute, kind of waking up those aromas. Next, we're gonna add some tomatoes. Just got a 29-ounce can of peeled tomatoes. We'll break those up just a little bit. And we want to add some seasoning. So I've got a 1/4 cup of smoked paprika, a couple tablespoons of Mexican oregano. I'm also going to do a 1/4 cup of the Cattleman's Mexicano. It's a great flavor base. All right, so now we've got the tomatoes kind of broken up. We're going to add our dried chilies, as well as 2 quarts of beef stock that I've been keeping warm. And we're gonna allow these chilies to rehydrate in this base that we've started. And this should take about 15, maybe 20 minutes. I'm gonna throw that sachet spices and herbs in there as well, start steeping, and we'll put a lid on it. And now for the rest of the cook, we're going to choke in the air just a little bit and try to stabilize this right around 350. Well, it's been about 15 minutes now. Let's take a look at these chilies. Yeah, so those are fully softened up now. So what we can do, you're gonna take those out, just fishing out the chilies. If you get some other stuff with it too, no big deal. I mean, don't put the sachet in the blender, that would be a bad idea. But we want to get those chilies out and into the blender so we can mix up a chili paste. Also want to ladle in just a little bit of liquid to help this blend down a little easier. A few ladles will do. I'm going to make pretty easy work of this with the Vitamix. Just crank it up, and it'll break it down pretty fine. If you're using like a food processor or a blender that doesn't work quite as well, you may want to strain this afterwards. but we're gonna get it pretty smooth here in the Vitamix. All right, added a little extra water just to help it along. But there it is, that's our chili paste. Gosh, it smells incredible. Let's get it back into the Dutch oven. I'm not gonna waste any of this. We'll rinse this out with some water because we are gonna top this off with water as well. A little warm water in there, rinse it out. Man, so much flavor in there already, and we don't even have the meat in yet. But that's coming next. So we're gonna just nestle these seared bits of beef in here. Also got these marrow bones. We're adding those extra just because of that texture. It adds to the consomme in the end. Get this thing fully loaded up. We're gonna top it off with some water and cover it back up. All right, let's close it up. Now over the next couple of hours, all that beef's gonna start to break down into that broth that we've created, and eventually we're gonna get to the point where we can just pull that meat out of there and kind of shred it apart for our birria tacos. Well, it's been nearly 3 hours now, and our beef is just tender as can be, so it's time to pull it off the grill. All right, so over the last few hours, I've added another quart of water just to keep that water level high. But as you can see, some of these bones have just completely fallen off, and then the meat that's on top of them is just ready to shred apart, almost like jelly. So now we're gonna pull the beef out of the stew and get it chopped up. So at this point, they're just slipping right off the bone, which is great. The bones we can discard now. The meat we're gonna chop up for our tacos. Consomme tends to be the word that you hear associated with birria, though a lot of us, especially like in the culinary world, it's associated with a very clear soup, a French soup. So obviously not that this time around. But essentially we're just talking about the broth. And that broth, man, it's really thickened up, and largely in part because all of that marrow is gone from those marrow bones. In fact, our broth's so thick right now that I'm gonna go ahead and add some water to it and throw it back on the grill to make sure it's warm. Pulled our sachet out with the beef. We can discard of that too. So just gonna thin this out with some water now. So much flavor in here. I'm gonna throw this back on the grill just to make sure it stays warm. So some of this beef is tender enough to just shred by hand. Some of it, we'll go ahead and give it a chop. But even that doesn't take much effort. All right, there it is. You know I gotta get a taste. It's fantastic. Just melts in your mouth. Oh, it's got a great little spice from all those chilies. You get the hint of tomato, but tomato's not what you notice. I mean, it's the overall flavor profile of the chilies with those herbs and spices. I mean, I know originally they put all that stuff in there to really cover up the funkiness of the goat meat, but in here, it just really accentuates what already tastes great. All right, we're gonna prep some tacos here. This is probably not a traditional technique, but we're gonna do it anyway. A little corn tortilla just on here with some duck fat on the griddle. And then we're gonna do some dipped in the fat from the consomme. And then we can kind of layer these up. Gotta watch out for some flames here. There we go. So we're essentially just kind of softening these up, getting a little bit of color on them. And then we'll just kind of combine them together, and that'll be one taco. All right, so let's build some of these tacos. We'll start with some of the birria. Then for toppings, we're just gonna keep it simple, classic. A little white onion, a little cilantro. I'm gonna hit this with just a little bit of queso fresco. Any crumbly cheese would do. Cotija would be beautiful. And now I have to pick my favorite one. This one. This is the one. So now this part's up to you. I'm gonna add a little consomme. I'm gonna add a little bit of lime juice. You can either dunk it or you can go for the consomme over the top, which is what I'm gonna do. Ooh, ladle that goodness right over the top. All right. Dang. That's crazy good. I mean, it's the juiciest taco you've ever had. There's no getting around that, especially with it drenched in consomme. I'm wearing it, aren't I? I don't care. Birria taco. Let's have a bowl of consomme. So we're just gonna fill up our little cup with the consomme. Ooh, I'm gonna leave a little bit of room to add some of the meat, some of that chopped up birria. Same toppings as before, onion, cilantro, queso fresco, another little squeeze of lime. Now it's feeling like the holidays. This is a winter warmer right here. Oh man. Feels good for the soul. It's so warm, those warming spices in there, that allspice, the clove, a little bit of cinnamon. It's not overpowering, but you know it's there. The chilies and the beef are where it's at though. And this is just such a fantastic way to eat it. It's really hot. It's really delicious. I'm gonna finish it out. I'll see you guys later. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out allthingsbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoyed the recipe, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All Things Barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.